Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and LEGO just sent me the brand new The Legend of Zelda official LEGO set. This is the Great Deku Tree. Now this is one of the most hotly anticipated sets of this particular year because not only is it the very first time that LEGO has ever made a Legend of Zelda set ever before, but judging by the response online, it's probably not going to be the last. Now this set is based off of two different games, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as well as The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and the minifigures are corresponding to that. You have young Link and Link from the first game, as well as Link and Princess Zelda from that next game, and what's even cooler is that not only is this a fully buildable, fully detailed Great Deku Tree, but it's also a 2-in-1. That's right. You can also use an additional couple of bags of pieces to rebuild this into the tree as seen in the Ocarina of Time, making this the absolute perfect set for anybody who is a fan of The Legend of Zelda. I can't wait to dive into this and share my thoughts on the build, and even though I'm not a big gamer myself, this LEGO set just really appealed to me just due to the incredible amount of detail and the phenomenal building techniques, and of course, those beautiful new minifigures featuring dual and triple molded components. It is such a cool build, so let's get into it right now. So here is set number 77092, Legend of Zelda Great Deku Tree. This is a really good set because not only can you build the version from Breath of the Wild, but you can also build the version from the Ocarina of Time, making it a 2-in-1 set. And special thanks to my friend Jonathan, aka Mini Superheroes Today, for working with me on this review and showcasing me footage of the alternate model for the set. Now the build comes with 2,500 pieces and retails for $300 US, which admittedly is really steep. But we're going to be taking a look at the value, the build, and all the details, and I'll give my closing thoughts on if I think this set is worth it at the end of the video. Let's go ahead and start off with the minifigures and characters of the build. Not only are there 4 incredibly detailed minifigures featured in the set, but there's also a whole host of buildable characters and accessories from both games that are represented in this set. Now in terms of the minifigures, we have 3 different versions of Link as well as 1 version of Zelda, 2 of the characters from the Ocarina of Time and 2 of them from Breath of the Wild. And for one thing, I just want to say in general about the figures, these are some of the most detailed minifigures we have gotten for really any LEGO theme in a long time. LEGO has clearly invested a lot into the Legend of Zelda franchise, and I really hope that this means we'll be getting more sets, especially because now there is a full-on banner on Shop at Home which you can see Legend of Zelda as its own theme, not just icons. We're going to start off by taking a look at the version of young Link here. This is arguably one of the most simple versions of the characters, but it's still really nicely detailed. They've gone ahead and recolored the LEGO Harry Potter skirt element in green to kind of showcase that outfit there, as well as triple molded the legs the same way the Simpsons characters had their molded legs done to showcase the skin on these shorts. The arms themselves are dual molded in green and the flesh color, which is really cool, and the hairpiece is phenomenally well done, featuring triple molded detail of the ears poking out, the yellow hair, and the green back. It is a super specialized LEGO piece, and definitely not something that would appear outside of this minifigure, but I really love it, and since this minifigure is so good, it's just a taste of what is about to come, because the figures in this set are absolutely some of the highlights of the entire purchase. Moving on to the next character from the Ocarina of Time, we have an adult version of Link, and this one actually comes with the Ocarina of Time itself, which is also a brand new mold introduced for this set. Again, a very specific mold for that particular instrument, so totally makes sense they would want to do it for this. He also does carry a Hylian shield as well, which is a really nice iconic piece. Again, something super specific to Zelda, but something that I definitely feel like LEGO will really want to get the best use out of for hopefully future Zelda sets. In terms of the headpiece, it's exactly the same as the young one, but the legs are now much longer. They're dual molded with printing on the side of the legs, which is really crazy to see that actually just featured in a standard LEGO minifigure, not like a collectible minifigure or anything. And yes, it does come with the Master Sword as well. Another incredibly iconic part of the Legend of Zelda franchise, which totally makes sense to include as a brand new dual molded element in the set. The Master Sword is easily now one of my favorite LEGO weapons, featuring dual molded detail in purple and transparent satin blue. It's got a really magical and sparkly quality to it. I'm really impressed by how they were able to pull it off, and altogether these two brand new accessories are pretty much quintessential to a Zelda set. I don't think they could have done the set without them, but obviously that means that LEGO really invested a lot to make these figures and accessories perfect. People have been asking for a Legend of Zelda set for a long time now, and I feel like just starting off with the figures, LEGO has put their best foot forward. So these are probably the best produced minifigures that they could have ever made for a set like this, and I'm struggling to think of ways that they could have been better. Sure, the printing on the torso is a little bit plain, with pretty much just plain green underneath the strap, but that actually does reflect the very simple video game sprite aesthetic that the first iterations of the characters had. I think it really does work for the style that they're going for, that this isn't hyper detailed, it's not super extra detailed with creases or folds on the shirt. It pretty much just feels kind of normal and simple for a LEGO minifigure while still being incredibly detailed. As we move into the two minifigures included for the Breath of the Wild, we have Link in the more battle adventure armor here, and this one does feature a brand new print for the shield, which is really cool, as well as a specialized hairstyle too. This is now a dual molded hairstyle in gold and the actual nougat color used for the ears, and it's really interesting how the hairpiece is actually pearl gold. The facial print is pretty much the same exact as the other adult version of Link, which I think makes sense because they're just representing two different adult versions of Link, one after he kind of falls into a deep slumber and then one before, and he actually is featuring a blue outfit this time with dual molded legs. No printing on the side of the legs this time, but I don't think they really needed it, and overall, just again, another really well-produced minifigure. I think one of my favorite details there is the Triforce symbol on the back, which is just a really small detail on the back there, but adds a lot of extra detail to the figures. And finally, you can't really have a Legend of Zelda set without a Zelda figure. You can see Princess Zelda here also sporting a brand new dual molded hairpiece with the flame yellowish orange or Keat orange color used for the hair, as well as the ears actually being dual molded into the piece, which is something that LEGO really hasn't done in a long time for elf ears or elf-like ears. Typically what they do, like in themes like LEGO Elves or even for the Elves CMF, they would just paint the ears on, which would cause the paint to sometimes chip off, but here they really did it right. They wanted to dedicate a lot into the production of the characters, and it really shows. Zelda herself is wearing her adventure outfit, so she has dual molded white and this lighter azure color for the arms. You have a really nicely detailed metallic golden and silver torso, and once again, dual molded legs, which are just plain black and brown, which I do believe have appeared in some other minifigures, but the hips are brand new, printed with the blue, and for once, the blue printing on the black hips actually is done really well. Sometimes when LEGO does this, they have a much darker color mix there, and it just doesn't look quite good, but for whatever reason, they were able to do it right for this figure, which is something I really appreciate. Zelda, of course, has two different expressions, one with the eyes closed like she's sleeping, as well as one with the eyes open, and I feel like those are really solid expressions for that figure. And of course, going back to the Ocarina of Time, we have all sorts of other different accessories and characters included. I really love this one because you actually have the printed face on the front of the kind of bulb there for the plant-like growth. It's just a really cute face. I don't know why, I just really gravitate towards the design of this character, and altogether, scattered throughout the set, there are all sorts of different buildable characters, icons, and accessories that really are made to bring about the feel of the Legend of Zelda, the different sets that they have and the different accessories in the games, which is really cool. Every single decal in this set is printed. There is not a single sticker in this set, despite the fact that there are quite a number of different prints, and we'll take a look at a few more of them as we go into the main build of the set itself, but I'm just really impressed by how much they were able to get across with either just regular LEGO pieces like this figure right here, or by printing different characters. It's really well done, but now I think it's time to jump right into the set. Because again, this is a 2-in-1 set, and we'll be looking at both the Ocarina of Time version and the Breath of the Wild version. Since the Breath of the Wild version is the version on the front of the box, and arguably the most detailed, it does use most of the pieces, we're gonna start with that. But one thing that does remain the same throughout both versions is the inclusion of Link's house. It's just a little standalone side piece that doesn't really actually officially connect to the main tree, but it's a cute little build. I like that it's utilizing some studs on the side building techniques. You have once again a printed sign depicting the house there, and I really like it for what it is. I also really like that scattered throughout the sets are these guiding little magical artifacts that obviously pop up in the game to guide you to specific spots, and while the house build isn't anything super crazy and does feel maybe a little bit to me like they had leftover budget for the set, like they finished the tree and were like, okay, we can just also include the house, I still like its inclusion, and I do feel like it is a worthy inclusion in the set because it's kind of where you start in the games. And speaking of starting off points, the next portion of the set that basically can be built even though you can decide to build either of the two versions is this front display here, which is centered around the Breath of the Wild. This is, of course, where you pull the Master Sword out of the stone, and I really love the building techniques here. It's actually surprisingly complicated for what it is, and it's very, very clever to be able to build on the side to pull the sword out of the rocks. It's really well done, and I really love the amount of detail and foliage they managed to pack into here. The studs in the side building techniques give it a really nice triangular shape, and I just love the tree detailings as well. The building techniques used for the trees and the tree trunks are some of the best that I've seen in any LEGO set. And I will say, trees in LEGO are really, really hard. Yes, these are helped by the inclusion of the brand new LEGO Clover Leaf element, which they introduced for the LEGO Friends sets, which I think is a really nice inclusion to the LEGO system, but overall, the trees here are really well done, which I guess makes sense given the set is just a gigantic tree, but I honestly can't stress enough that how in a set like this, the trees look really, really good, especially in an official LEGO set, working under so many different constraints. I really love the surrounding foliage of the set. Of course, before we get into the main tree itself, I do want to focus on some of these side builds scattered around there. You have for the Ocarina of Time, these blue little buds, which totally makes sense to include just for the Ocarina of Time build, but I kind of wanted to include it just to make a more complete scene because you actually have all the pieces you need to build a lot of the smaller accessories, even though that if you just build the Breath of the Wild version, you don't really need to put those accessories together. But now, I think it's time to focus in on the main tree itself. As we move upwards, you can see the massive face carved into the tree that actually showcases the tree is a full-on sentient being itself. And this has a really, really fun action feature we're about to see in action. Before we do that though, I do want to highlight the really nicely done roots. I love the usage of the quarter wheel frame elements to actually have the roots be moving outside of the tree. And yes, you can open and close the mouth, the eyebrows move up and down as it talks, and even the lip of the mouth actually angles upwards in a different angle than the bottom jaw. That was a feature that really impressed me, just how complex this was for what it is. And if you look very closely, you can see the lip of the bottom lip actually moving at a different rate than the bottom jaw. It's really well done, it feels seamless, it really does feel like the tree itself is talking, and I gotta say, massive, massive props to the designers for making this work. They also have these beautiful pink blossoms all around the tree, and while I maybe would have preferred it to potentially have those larger leaf elements in pink, I think that would have been really cool and obviously something that the other version of the tree does use in green. I still think that using the classic LEGO leaf elements for here wasn't too bad of a decision. Moving on to the inside here, you have a bit of a livable space. You have a bed that's made out of leaves there, you have a treasure chest with a slingshot inside, which actually is just supposed to be from the Ocarina of Time version, but I decided to throw it in anyways. You have a bit of a campfire, even some specialized printed elements of leaves inside of the house area itself, and a ton of different plants which actually correspond to plants in the game. Moving onwards to here, it is honestly not the best looking from the back. Clearly this is a model that is only meant to be seen from the front. The back is pretty much just kind of thrown together, but there is a large lever which you can use to actuate the action feature here and have the eyebrows actually move while it talks, which is really, really cool. I love that play feature, and I wish that more LEGO display sets factored in play features like these that make it not just a really nice set on display, but also one that's really good to play with. On the top of the tree, you have another series of different accessories, printed elements like the heart tile in upside down, representing the leaves there. You have more of those spirits guiding you with the printed dish elements with wings on it, and overall, just a really nice and cozy area on the top of the tree as well, which I really appreciate because that's not something that will get a lot of attention, but they really wanted to include that much extra detail. On the inside of the tree, you also have these breakaway side elements, which showcase some hidden features and hidden accessories inside. These are actually different depending on which version of the tree that you want to build. The Ocarina of Time version has some target practice areas and a bow, and the Breath of the Wild version has this really nice printed eye element here, the 1x2 tile, which looks super good, and also is an accessory that can be held by a minifigure. On the other side of the tree, we have some magical artifacts hidden on the side once you remove the panel here, including a recolored version of the LEGO Minecraft head, which we've seen previously in LEGO Marvel as the Cosmic Cube, aka the Space Stone, but it is really cool to see even more magical artifacts used here, and I'm really glad that piece is continuing to pop up in other sets. One thing I really want to emphasize on this build are the phenomenal building techniques. As you can see, as you zoom into the eye, can you guess what piece that is? That's actually the Butcher's Hat from the collectible minifigure series. I think Series 6 was when it was introduced. It's a really specialized minifigure accessory, but it works so well for the eyes of the tree. And I'm so impressed, I don't even think I would have thought of using that piece as an eye, and that is one of the coolest NPUs or nice parts usages I've ever seen in an official LEGO set. And finally, as we wrap up this part of the build, Link's house has a little stash of potions and magical artifacts inside. Again, of course, all of which do appear in the games, which I really appreciate because as you're building this, the instruction manual actually calls out exactly what you're building and you're putting it together, which is really cool because it showcases what you can do with the artifacts in the game. But this is really just one half of the set. We've taken a look at the Breath of the Wild version of the tree, but the Ocarina of Time version is a completely different build. It doesn't use nearly as many pieces, but it does feature a ton of extra parts, and actually, you have a number of pieces left over when you finish building this set just to be able to put it together into the other version of the build, which is actually pretty rare for a 2-in-1 set. The really cool thing though is that, of course, while bags 21 and 23 are left over, bag 22 is technically also supposed to be left over if you only build the Breath of the Wild version, but instead, it actually features a lot of extra pieces that you can just use to build artifacts and little creatures and characters and accessories completely separate from the main build. You don't need to take any pieces that you already use for it, and I really appreciate that. You can see here that bag 22 is pretty self-contained. The entire bag is just making figures and accessories like the spider here that you can use to accentuate the Ocarina of Time build, and it's really cool because obviously there's a lot of exclusive printed elements here like the Skulltula face, which I just wanted to use to put together the characters, which now I can. So now my model is kind of a hybrid between the two. But let's now take a look at the Great Deku Tree in a completely different build version for the Ocarina of Time. You can see they've removed the larger trees around it, but the build for the tree is actually almost completely different, featuring brand new motion functions. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do with the build, and it's really interesting just how different of a build it is. You can see there's not much overgrowth around the tree. It feels more of a livable space, but of course you do have the little buds around the tree itself. And the face is completely different, showcasing almost like an older, more weathered look to it. You have a more complete top of the tree, which is really interesting how they were able to use a lot of the elements that they initially were using for the vines. Instead, they're using these as the tree elements on the top here, and I honestly can't tell which version of the set I like better. I think I lean a little bit more towards the Breath of the Wild version, mostly because it feels more like a complete scene, there's more going on with it. But if you're a fan of this game, like if the Ocarina of Time was your Zelda game that you played growing up, then it totally makes sense to build this one, and it has a really cool action feature where you can slide the mouth open, causing the door to the house to open and close, and you can even make it look like it's talking that way. It's a really clever feature, and I really love just how smooth that feels, and you can also cause the Skulltula to drop down on any unsuspecting visitors, which is a really cool addition to the build. It's just a super simple function. It's attached by a string that you can crank up with a winch, but it's one that works really well and acts as a bit of a surprise action feature for the build. Finally, there's just a little treasure chest inside with a slingshot, but overall, that sums up our look at the alternate model for the set. Now it's time to take a little bit of a look at value. Now again, this includes 2,500 pieces, it's 2-in-1, so not all of the pieces are even used on either version of the set, as well as 4 minifigures, the Adventure Hero version of Princess Zelda, as well as 3 different versions of Link. You have the small build of Link's house, as well as the main build for the tree itself. And overall, how do I feel about the value? $300 is a lot, and I think it is a lot to pay for this. I would have been a lot happier if this set was, say, around $250, especially given that for either version of the tree that you do decide to make, you're not going to be using some of the pieces for either build. Still, that being said, I do have to give credit where credit's due for the phenomenal minifigures. The minifigures are some of the most detailed we have ever seen in official LEGO sets that are not collectible minifigures. They feel almost to the level of collectible minifigures in the detail, the accessories, the dual and triple molding, the new elements created. The budget for the set must have been crazy to include so many new molds specific to this theme, and while I'm guessing that some of that budget may have been hopefully split across future Zelda sets coming out, as of right now, this is the only one, so this bears the bulk of the budget for the set. Do I still think $300 is too much? Absolutely. It's a lot to pay for this, but I will say in person, it does look a lot bigger than it does look in the photos online. I feel like the photos online don't necessarily do the best job of selling you on just how big this set is, and while I do feel like the price should have really been $250 instead of $300, it's hard to complain about a set this good, with phenomenal building techniques, stunning minifigures, and a real love letter to fans of The Legend of Zelda, to both games that they really wanted to feature here, the Breath of the Wild and the Ocarina of Time. I'm really happy with the set and hope that they will continue to make more sets like this in the future. That's all for this review. I hope you enjoyed our special look at this set, and thanks to LEGO for sending this set early to review, although I might be buying a second one just so I can display both versions at once. That's all for now. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks, and bye for now.